My background is actually I'm a professional engineer, and I did a fair amount of time with scheduled airlines, so I've seen that corporate world. One of the worrying things, I'm still a licensed engineer, and everything I get involved with is now residing in museums, even though I've got cover on them, so it's quite a worrying fact. Anyway, having left that world, I've had some involvement with Cobham and military contracts and big MRO work, which really gave an opportunity to see another side of what goes on, very much hand-to-mouth stuff. And then over the last 10 years, I've been involved with what goes on in associations. So it's just to give you an idea that I have a round experience in aviation, but what I don't have is the sort of experience that a lot of the people around here have. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a very new world. One of the things that becomes really obvious to me is in the context of this event, things are changing rapidly. And the one thing we can't do is resist that change. And you see a lot of the old school who don't want to see things change at the pace that's going to be required. We've actually got opportunities in the UK to get ahead of the curve, and we need to try and grab that and not resist everything that's happening here with what we're doing in the old world of fixed wing and rotary aircraft. So to me, it's a big lesson that we've got to take from this. Now, one of the things I wanted to highlight is a different way of working. And in the recent past, we've looked at working together with a number of associations in order to focus our activities on commercial GA. And for anyone who's been around aviation for a while, if you want to have a long discussion in a bar, get someone to describe what GA is, and you'll get many, many different versions of it. But what we're looking at is what does deliver the commercial aspects of GA, which is why we've pulled together our colleagues in AOPA, Martin over there, Chief Exec. We pulled together ARPAS for the community that's here with Graham, who's off doing another session at the moment. And we've got Helicopter Association with Tim Fauchon. And we're working together to try and make sure that we get the right representation for our activities. Now, to explain what I mean by that is, left to its own devices, aviation can become a little bit divisive. And you end up with different approaches to government, to regulators, and it can very much be conquer and divide. And what we're seeking to do is actually drive the concept of one voice and to try and have one strategic position with government to try and further the interests of what we're doing and actually how we transition to what is going to be a new world of aviation over the next 10 to 20 years. And it's really important that we do this. A great example is what's happened in the last couple of days. And we've got a change of Secretary of State. We'll probably have change in other areas of aviation. And the whole point is you can develop relationships with government, with ministers, but you can't rely on those things. What you've got to do is actually work together and get a good strategic position and fully understand what happens in the legislation and what happens. And you've got to be able to go and point at something on the shelf and say, this is what we all agreed on and this is what we're going to deliver on. So it's vital that we look at how we get that united position. Now, we work very hard on the alliance, and that's GA for business, flagrant use of the term, and those associations, we're all equal partners in driving it, all not for profit, all trying to represent the interests of what's going on in our communities. But the one thing we do is actually we sit down and draw ourselves to a strategic position, and we reflect that through into government and government agencies. That is well and truly established now. We're into effectively our second year of having those relationships, focused through with DFT, and then drawing all the other government departments as required. So it's formally structured, and we're formally driving the issues that matter to us as a community. To understand how that's different from what's happened in the past, it's tended to be individual associations being approached. It's tended to be focus on the regulator and discussing regulatory issues. The big issue that we've done now is to switch it on to say, what are the business matters that impact what we're doing as a community, and how can we change what we do in business? One of the best examples of this was something during the tail end of the Brexit negotiations, when we were able to reflect what we needed to do with the permitting process across Europe. And by being able to get our voice in to the negotiating team and the regulator on a weekly basis to ensure that we gave them the negotiating tools to go and get the right things in place for us, is the way to be able to work. It worked very well. Government worked very well in that context. We've got to try and replicate those things. Change of subject. We've seen the impact of the pandemic, and it's been quite profound. We've seen the change in flying hours. We've seen the shift in what goes on in scheduled commercial activity versus what's going on in business aviation. And it's not what everyone expected to happen. If you look at most of the economic models that you'll see now, the split between long haul and short haul is still quite prevalent. And therefore, the whole shape of what we're likely to do is different. Through that process, we had a whole host of people leaving our industry. And again, one of the things that we worked on together was to ensure that we got ourselves an aviation skills retention platform by pushing the one voice into government and actually getting that platform in place so that we could reposition the people who've been made redundant through other parts of aviation. What's more important now is we previously had a problem with next generation and drawing those people into aviation as a whole. And that includes into the community here as well. And we've got to work really hard to try and make aviation attractive. We've switched what goes on with this aviation skills retention platform, and it's changed into a recruitment platform now. And we've got government support for that through 2023 as well. And the idea is that we're going to try and draw in people into our industry through a whole lot of vocational training, as well as some graduate training, but it's all focused on what we need in aviation as a whole. In fact, a quick thing, next week, Generation Aviation is being launched by government, aviation minister, and a raft of organisations. The launch is starting at Heathrow, but it's all about how we can encourage the next set of recruitment for people through the back end of this year. So all I'm saying is, if you can get the one voice working well, you can make the points and get people listen to it, you can actually get action into place. So to me, that's an important message, and we've all got to work really hard on what we can do for our next generation. One of the things that's important to understand is that, back to working with government, and people just use the term working with government. Well, it's not as simple as that, because government doesn't necessarily work together. And it's actually how you can make all of the government departments interact in a way that's going to be useful for business. And that's the difference in the approach that we've got. We're not just trying to form a relationship with a DFT, we're actually drawing in biz, we're drawing what's going on with Treasury and the Home Office to look at the whole package to ensure what we can do. Martin will remember we had some great efforts a couple of years ago of trying to draw people into the UK for training, and desperately wanted to actually get them visas so that we could bring them in. They happened to be from China, and we did everything, even got help from the regulator to try and make it happen, and didn't succeed in getting those people across the threshold. It wasn't just those 20 people, it was the other 900 that could have come to the UK that we potentially missed out on. So it's all about how we can make things like that more successful and having the right strategic position. I think one of the things that we've got to do is treat what we're seeing now as a transition. It's all about the service that we're going to be offering to whoever the clients happen to be. It actually doesn't matter whether it's a rotary, or whether it's a multi-rotor vehicle, or whether it's autonomous, or whether it's a delivery system, or whether it's a fixed wing going from a hub. The point is, it's about how we can enable that service to be delivered and not resist any of the potential change that people are seeing here now. One of the things that I think we need to emphasise is that as aviation, we have tended to be slightly fragmented compared to some other examples that we see around. I'm not sure whether people are aware of the term partnership and partnership with government, but the most recent partnership established was the Space Agency and that partnership. One of the most successful ones has been aerospace and the ADS relationship with government. What that really means is a long-term focus, band of ministers and MPs and departments linked in to what goes on with your activities. I've got to commend what ADS and aerospace have done. They've ensured that they've secured many things and they have acted on that single voice. I think now the time is right for us to start acting as aviation services. Because if you look at it practically, aviation services is larger than aerospace now. What I mean by that is delivering cargo and passengers. So the movement of those people, once the aircraft has been passed to you by the OEM, we are the larger part of what goes on in the UK. I'm going to suggest that now is the right time for us to, particularly with a new cabinet, with a new Secretary of State and potentially, sorry Robert, a new aviation minister, we should be looking at how we can establish a partnership for aviation services. Because if we can do that, we can drive towards the one strategic voice for us as aviation. Because absolutely the last thing that I want to see us do is something that one of my old MDs said to me when I was in a large airline, when we were talking about a shortage of resources. Well, don't worry about that training department. All we have to do is pay more than everybody else. And all that happens to do is a race to the bottom. Because if we don't have enough resources in aviation, then we will all suffer. There's no question about it. You can only chase the money tree for so long. So the vision that many of us are working on is ensuring that we can create all of the vehicles for delivering aviation training with centres of excellence around the UK to actually have a shelf that's loaded up with vocational training and apprenticeships onto graduate streams and postgraduate streams to ensure that we have everything in place so that all of us can go and sell to the 10-year-old, to their parents, here is a career for you, here is a way to get into aviation, here is how you get paid employment. And by the way, you don't have to create massive debt for the future of your youngster coming to join us in aviation, because 90% plus of the people that we use are vocationally trained. So it's really important that we've got to get these things in place to sell it to our colleagues in aviation. So that's my pitch as far as working together and driving a single voice. We absolutely must try and push aviation services and get a partnership with government. It is invaluable to us. We're talking about the growth of the community in here. Currently, our community in commercial GA may be 8 to 9 billion per annum, maybe some 40,000 jobs. If you look at the value of what this community here is likely to be, could be 20 to 30 billion. So you think of that delivering together what we could do, and then a number of people we're going to need to support that industry. It's vital that we try and drive this forward.